Hey guys, it's Collin Campbell with CampHouse Marketing here on the inaugural, the very first podcast episode of Business on Tap, where we talk all things business, business growth, marketing strategies, all kinds of stuff. And for our very first podcast episode, I have none other than Mr. Zach White from Chapman's Brewing.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. This is for sure the first time we've ever filmed this, and it's awesome.
We haven't done this before. We
Nope.
haven't,
We haven't even tried. It's crazy. No, I'm excited to be here. As you know, I'm a big fan of the podcasts, and when you asked me, I said, absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah. You're a fan of podcasts in general. Like, you just being a part of them. And yeah, makes sense.
I think it's a cool part of the culture.
The marketing culture or our
just
culture?
in general.
Okay.
Just like, because I remember back in the day, you used to you'd always have the tunage on the TV or on the radio, and now it's just what kind of podcast you're listening to.
Nope, makes sense.
Music gets so boring, but podcasts, there's so many of them out there, and they're about everything.
Everyone's got one.
Everyone has one.
And now it's CampHouse's turn. We got this.
There we go. All right.
Tell me, this is a business podcast. We got to talk about business. Tell me about what you do, because you just got a promotion at Chapman's. Tell me about that.
So I am now the president of Chapman's Brewing Company.
And it says president on your business card?
So I go by El Prez.
Okay.
But yeah, I just a little less formal. For those of you that know me, I'm a jokester. But no, I go by El Prez, the president of Chapman's Brewing. I'm in charge of all the aspects. So the tap room dynamics and all the menus and all that kind of stuff that goes there. And then for the actual brewing side, being in charge of what beers get made and when and ordering and hiring, firing, all the fun stuff.
Much of a difference from what you were doing before? Because I believe you were, COO?
I was the chief operations officer before, and I had that role for probably 3 years. Effectively, what's going on is Scott's our founder, and him and I both started a second operations company, and effectively we've kind of peeled away from each other. So I'm handling everything Chapman's now, and he's handling everything operations company. And it kind of took off, I guess, faster than we thought it was going to, and it just needs a diligent eye on it at all times. And so by having both of us kind of split, it didn't really make sense. And so if he's only doing operations company and I'm only doing Chapman's, we can kind of get a better view of what's going on.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
Before we get too much in this conversation, you brought beers, and I want to try them.
Yeah, so obviously, you can't talk brewery without having at least a beer in you. And I brought 4 different ones. So I brought 2 core beers, and I brought 2 of our kind of random, we call them roulettes down at Chapman's. But I have Harvester Lager, which is our core lager. I brought this is our first ever actual canned collaboration with the NVETS, which is the Indiana Veterans Association. I brought the Poof, which is a beer that kind of was just a big guess last year, and it went off really well, and then we made it again. And I brought our new, you can't tell from the can because it's just a silver, but this is our new core hazy IPA called Lumen. If you would like to crack into those.
Let's do it.
We could. All right, let's get after it.
You got to get that crispiness. Come on.
Oh, Jamie, if only you could hear this. Sorry, for those of you listening, Jamie is not Jamie. It's actually, her name is Adriana.
She's our wonderful assistant during these podcasts.
She does a great job.
She'll get some screen time here
eventually. Slide me a glass? All right. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this beer has gone through some trials and tribulations. Harvester Lager used to be Harvester Blonde Ale, and this was I've been with Chapman's for 10 years. I wasn't there for the inception of it, but I've taken it through COVID and all that good stuff. But so this beer was Harvester Blonde Ale until about 2020, and then to be honest with you, we released something called the FTP Czech Pilsner. And we loved that beer so much that we decided to change the recipe of the blonde ale to something similar to that Czech Pilsner. Like a lot of our, I'm sure you've heard of like Pilsner Urquell. It's just a really, really good Czech. It's like the first Czech Pilsner. That for us at the brewery, that was like most of ours, like our garage beer, for instance. Like I just always have that beer in hand because it's just so good. We wanted something that was a little more similar to that, and so we turned Harvester Blonde into Harvester Lager.
And is this the beer that you put in front of entry-level craft beer drinkers? Is this like what you try to, like, hey, try this first. This will be a good starting point for you?
Typically what you'll find is, obviously you have, like, there's a couple different classes of, like, beer drinkers out there. You've got your light beer crowd, so you have, like, your Miller, your Bud, your Coors Light guys, and that kind of stuff. They just want something that's similar to what they're kind of used to. And unfortunately for them, whenever they hear craft, they think IPAs are things that are, like, super bitter, right? The cool thing with craft is it's like there's a gambit of different kinds and styles out there. And so the next, this beer goes well with anyone that has tried any kind of level of craft because it invokes that same, like, Pilsner or Kel style craft beer with them. But then also for a guy that's only into Bud Light, Miller Lite, it's not going to knock their socks off. It's just, this is a straight down the barrel good lager.
Makes sense.
Easy drinking.
So going back to the actual brewery as a whole, and we're kind of riffing here, take me through a little bit of the life cycle of Chapman's Brewing, like where you guys started out, where you're at now, a little bit of history on that.
Yeah, so we started off in 2012. So we've been around for almost what?
13 years?
13, 14 years almost now. We started, and I apologize, I've got a little bit of a throat thing going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody does. Everyone's getting sick. Started out in 2012 in Angola, Indiana, and the initial concept was Scott was the dean of the business college up at Trine, and they did for their like senior project, they did they had to do a business plan for something, and the kids all decided to do a business plan for a brewery. That went so well that Scott was like, "Oh man, this could actually work." And so the initial like inception of Chapman's was that we were going to make a cider, and it was going to be called the ale cider. So it was a mix of a beer and a cider. And so they rented a building up in Angola, got all the equipment, everything set up to make a whole bunch of like one thing basically. And they took that recipe from like, I think a buddy of theirs or something for the ale cider. That was the original. Fun fact, when you start at Chapman's Brewing, that's the first thing you have to do is you have to slug a can of old ale cider, and it's like 13 years old now. It's disgusting.
How much do you have left?
I think there's still like 3 or 4 cans left.
Okay.
So there's not many, but yeah, they're gross. When I had to do mine, I about threw that up. But when they took that recipe from like a buddy of theirs, their plan was to make think like Red's Apple Ale kind of. So a beer / cider kind of like mix. The problem is when you brew that on like a very large scale, you got to scale it for like a home system, which is like less than 1 barrel, to a large system, and for us it was 20 barrels at the time. You lose a lot of that like residual sweetness, and so what the end state was, it was drinkable, but it wasn't like super sweet. And in Indiana, they love sweet stuff here, right? So it just didn't really take off very, very well. And so Chapman Cider Company very quickly turned into Chapman's Brewing Company, and we came out with Englishman, which is our most well-known core brown ale. Harvester, we had a pale ale called Brighton at the time. And then, over the course of 14 years now almost, we've gone from a like hub and spoke model with lots of tap rooms to now we have essentially centralized all of our brewing and tap room and everything operations into just Fort Wayne, which is where it turns out if you want people to buy your stuff, you got to put the business where people are. So we put one tap room and the brewery in Fort Wayne and just consolidated everything down into one space. And so it's easier now because everything's out of one building, but also everything as far as like distribution wise, because we've really kicked off distribution more now. Everything distributes out of one centralized location versus having to pick up from all over the place and kind of go from there.
Makes sense.
So that's a little bit about Chapman's. Sorry, I can feel my voice waning.
Is it going?
It comes and goes.
Okay.
If I do a couple of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think about, because we've known each other for a long time, and full disclosure, Chapman's is a client of mine. I handle their social media stuff.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I first met you.
Go ahead. You can tell it.
Tell the story?
Do it.
He was just just a guy with the camera with
just a wee lad.
just a wee lad at the Bluffton Burr Fest. Do you remember this story? You weren't listening last time? Oh, Jamie, I thought that was your whole job. Anyways, no. So I met Collin a long time ago, and this was probably 6 or 7 years ago at this point. But I think you were trying to get like a YouTube channel off the ground. With doing
a craft beer focused YouTube channel.
Something pretty cool. And he was just a guy drinking beer at a beer fest with a camera and a little like Rode mic on the top of it, just doing interviews.
Yeah.
So fast forward to 4 years later, I think I walked in and saw you interviewing Casey and Jared, and then I think you reached out because you said that you were starting a marketing company.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking about the beer styles that you guys are making. Have they changed at all from the Angola location to the new location? Like, what's kind of the methodology? What's the philosophy on brewing right now?
So I would say the original methodology behind like Chapman's is that we didn't want to have any kind of like quote unquote like gimmicky beers. We were really big into like super traditional German styles only. And like back then, a gimmicky beer was like a hazy IPA. But now when you think gimmicky beers, I'm thinking like lemon thyme seltzers, or throw pumpkin and peanut butter into something and see what happens.
Any of the pickle beers.
At this point, you can like, you go into a liquor store and you see just a wall of like random weird labels. A lot of that for us used to be like super gimmicky stuff. And we just wanted to be known for brewing like really good traditional styles. The industry itself went through a change, I would say, in its like peak in like 2016, 2017. And it's that like turn and burn mentality where restaurants that would pick up your beers would never want to have the same thing on twice, because a lot of craft beer fans that are like really into craft beer are always after the newest, latest, and greatest, the new thing. So like even for me, like if I see something that's new, I'll try it at least once. I mean, even if I don't like the thing, I just want to say that I've tried it. Whereas at our inception, a lot of people were sticking with like what they knew. So they would, the big craft brands were still really prevalent, which is like your Lagunitas, your Sam Adams, your Dogfish Head, that kind of stuff. Whereas now you're seeing a little bit of return to that, I think, with like the mixed 12s and like 15 packs and whatnot. But people they were definitely going for you just needed more stuff. And so as to get back to like your original question, the brewery in Angola was originally created to make just a lot of like a couple of things. And so we had a 20-barrel system. We had a handful of 40-barrel bright tanks. We had 100-barrel or 40-barrel fermenters. We had a 100-barrel bright tank. And just for like reference, 100 barrels means you can make 200 half barrels of something, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of beers. It's a lot of beer. And for a fairly well unknown company at the time to make that much of one thing, that means you're just going to be sitting on it for so long. And if with beer, it has a shelf life of about like 3 to 9 months, depending on what like style you're making. So the goal is to try to get that out quickly. But that was the problem with Angola. With the new location we have now, we have a 10-barrel system with 7 fermenters and 7 bright tanks. And so we can make an awful lot of like our core lineup, so people can always get the regular things that they want. But we're also way more getting into like the experimental stuff. So we're definitely trying more random off-the-wall things just to get those really like big craft fans in. And so I'd say it's changed just a little bit.
Is there one particular thing that you think your brewery is pretty good at? Maybe not one particular thing, but is there a style or a genre that you guys are really nailing? And maybe it's just a type of beer you want to call out right now.
So I see, and I've noticed this. There's a little bit more on this, Ken, if you want it. I've noticed a trend in the craft beer scene, which is after COVID and during COVID, you saw and this is like when liquor stores closed down or went to like a pickup only kind of thing, is you saw a return of consumers to like their tried and true brands. So before, when they were going for those mixed or those 4-packs of like the 16-ounce can 4-packs heavy craft, you saw a return to Sam Adams Boston Lager. You saw a return to Bell's Two Hearted. You saw a return to like Lagunitas. So you saw people rushing back to the brands that they knew. And that's honestly, I think it's because you had to order things through an app. And if you didn't know what the beer was called, how could you order it? But you knew what Two Hearted was. And so right now I see a return to, I think craft lagers are taking off. And I've really pushed the guys to make, I wouldn't say as many lagers as we can, but always pushing like the bounds of like making something else that's just clean and crisp and refreshing and easy to drink. I don't want to have anyone say that this is undrinkable. You know what I mean? So I think our guys are doing, Jared or Casey and John are doing a kick-ass job at just clean, crisp lagers. We just had one come out a couple weeks ago called Munich Gold, which is just a Munich-style lager, but it is very, very good. And with lagers, you're wanting something that's clean, completely see-through, got a little bit of like a crispiness to it. And yeah, I also find that those are like the styles that are the hardest to brew, actually. They're the most simple, but they're the hardest to brew. And it's just because there's like no giant flavors to hide behind if you mess something up. So,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Well, if you're ready, I'm ready to try number 2.
Numero dos.
What you got? What you got?
Okay, so this is our latest collaboration. What we've been pushing this last year or two is trying to get more like collabs in. I wouldn't say that we were against them or anything before. That just wasn't really top of mind.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we're in kind of a larger city with just access to people, we've tried to reach out to other organizations and people that you meet at beer fests or out and about doing sales or whatever. But we ended up running into a good guy named Andrew, and he works for the InVets, which is an Indiana Veterans Association. Like what they do is essentially. You come back as a soldier from, overseas or wherever, and you're struggling to find work. What they do is they try to, get you a job somewhere, get you back in a civilian life and that kind of stuff. So it's actually a pretty needed thing. But we brewed a beer in collaboration with those guys, and they called this the RED American Amber Ale, which stands for Remember Everyone Deployed. It's a big military term, but yeah, trying to get into more collaborations, and this is one we're really happy with. But it's just an American Amber Ale. Think of like Bell's Best Brown or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, it tastes fantastic. It's awesome.
It's one of those where the cool thing is that Andrew's dad, the guy that we work with over there, his dad is a big like home brewer, and he has like a crazy homebrew setup. I don't know if he's told you at all anything about that, but like this homebrew setup is like a $20,000 he's got everything automated and all kinds of stuff. So he used to really get into it. But this was a beer that him and his dad used to make like as a kid. And I think his was like slightly more red than ours that came out. They use a specific kind of corn that we just can't get a hold of anymore. That gives more of like a red hue. But for our first try at that, I think it's a really good amber.
No, it's easy to drink. It's clean. It's good.
A comment that like you hear a lot of like, I don't know, beer is so subjective. And a comment that you hear from like craft beer heads or whatever, but they'll say like, "Oh yeah, that's really drinkable," and it's such a concept that like I would like, I can drink it for sure. But when I think drinkability, I think something that's not. I'm not like struggling to get it down. Like I definitely I'm not. I want to go back for the next one. I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They keep coming. It's no weird flavors. It's just down.
Yeah. Like, I think some, like, Gozas are, like, slightly too salty, or pepper beers or whatever that are just a little bit too hot. And it's like, well, I wouldn't quite call that drinkable. I'd call that good for, for what you're after. But if you want something that's drinkable, it's the thing that you can come back to.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So this next one for you, it's a 2-parter.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
I got to be honest. I'll see if I can, after I ramble through the first part of it, if I can make my way back to the second part.
I'll remind you. We'll
We'll
circle back around. So yes, I'm thinking about styles, kind of think about brewery models. Is there a specific vein or a business name that comes to mind that you're thinking like, oh yeah, I would love to model my brewery after those guys? Or what's kind of an inside look of your operational model, and is there anyone you're trying to model after?
This is different than the last one. Yeah, threw me a curveball here. Yeah, no, if I think of like who's doing it really well right now, and who I want to like model everything after, I'd have to go with Founders probably.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I always say with Founders is that like I don't want to have like everything. If like for instance, if Founders has a bad Wednesday at their tap room or their one of their tap rooms, I don't think they care too much. They care more about the 15 trailerfuls of all day IPA that go out every week. That's what pays the bills. And so I'd like to get to a point with Chapman's that I can say, we had a bad Wednesday, but it's okay because I had 15 trailerfuls of Harvester go out. And I realistically, in my opinion, and I think Founders does this really well, the tap room should be the place that people go to experience the brand, not necessarily find it. So everyone out there that's heard of craft beer at all has probably heard of All Day IPA or Centennial IPA or one of their beers. You have that on tap somewhere, or you see that in Meijer or Kroger or whatever. That's not where you didn't go up to Michigan to go to Founders for the first time. You've had their beer before, but when you go to one of their tap rooms, that's where you go to experience what that brand is all about. And so I would love to have Chapman's turn into that one of these days, and we're trying to double down on distribution right now. And so that's the inevitable goal, but you really need to work with your distributor and it's a building. I mean, it's slow build. Like Founders started in like the 90s, maybe even 89. I mean, they're an old brand, and they've gone through a lot. So we've got a little ways to go until we're there. But yeah,
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Gotcha.
That's the goal. Part two was I lost
Part
it.
two, and I didn't really explicitly ask it,
All right.
but thinking more about the styles, is there any brands, any breweries out there that you're thinking like they're putting out some really good stuff? They're putting out some heavy hitters. We'd love to be up there. And maybe it's not necessarily the brewery, but who do you got your eye on right now?
When I went to California the last time, which is it's been a couple years since. When I think about like San Diego beer culture, which is there's 200 and something craft breweries in San Diego. If you open up a brewery there, you have to be brewing good stuff because there's just simply too much competition to not brew something that's good. And so when I think about like my trip out there, I think of like Deft Brewing. They're a tiny little, I mean, relatively for me, a completely unknown spot in go for it, in San Diego. But when we walked in, me and my buddy James were out there just driving around, and I was like, oh, there's a brewery over there. Let's go check it out. Tiny little, 5-barrel system. The brewer was the owner, was the bartender. Talked to him for a while. But when we walked in, they had a wall full of Great American Beer Fest, like, medals. And for any of those that like don't know, winning a medal at GABF is like the end-all, be-all. If you do that, you are...
It's the Nobel Prize for beer.
Yeah, it's as good as it's going to get for you, basically. But
there's nothing after.
Nothing after. It is all that matters. Winning a GABF medal is everything to us. Mm-hmm. And it's everyone submits, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of submissions. But this little tiny, brewery in the middle of nowhere had like a wall full of medals, and I couldn't believe I'd never heard of them before. But they are kicking out some of like the best, just super crispy, classic German styles I've ever had before. They didn't have a whole lot of like weird, random peanut butter beers or dill pickle beers, nothing like that. But they just had like a really good, solid lineup of like classic German styles that that's what I'm really into.
Well, as a brewery, you probably respect that, right?
Yeah, it's a respect thing for sure. So like and you know this, like all of us brewery guys, when we go to beer fests and we go to try a new place we never heard of or whatever, typically our go-to is like, I want to try their lager first. Because I know that if they can brew a good lager, then I know that like the rest of their stuff is going to be good. And I mentioned it when we talked about Harvester, but like with lagers, you literally have a little bit of hops, you've got yeast, and you have a little bit of grain and water. So if you mess up anywhere in that process of like the beer gets too hot during fermentation or it gets too cold during the brew cycle or whatever, it creates off flavors. And a lot of times in lagers, it comes in like the form of like buttery popcorn. It just tastes like that. So if you make a mistake anywhere in a lager, you can definitely taste it. But if you make a big whoops in a 13% stout you're brewing or something, there's so much chocolate or whatever flavor in there that you can hide behind that. But
well, you can add more after the fact,
and
too.
you can add more too to just cover that up.
Yeah.
Or I mean, a lot of times you just, you just dose a keg and get rid of that flavor, and all of a sudden it's something new, right? So I'll say that anywhere that's making just really good lagers right now, and Def Brewing for me was definitely one of them. But then of course you've got Founders is doing good beers. Stone always releases great beer. Lagunitas, I think they just went through a buyout period, so we'll see what's going on there, and you can quote me on that. I don't know exactly, but I think they just went through something like that. But the big guys, they're all making good beers.
Good.
They're not, but Def Brewing, if you're in California listening to this, go there.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to our third of four, the third beer.
Oh, this is the heavy hitter of the group.
Okay, I'm ready.
So this beer is called the Poof.
Yeah, and you got to tell the story about like how this beer came about.
So one of our brewers' name is John, and John and Casey were sitting in the brewery last year, and they had a quiet day in the brewery. They didn't really have a whole lot going on, and we just had some extra yeast sitting around, and we had a couple bags of grain, and we had some hops, and they were like, let's just see what happens. Let's just brew a beer for this. And it's like a mapley, nutmeggy kind of thing. It's a really good fall beer. But John always calls it the Poof when all the leaves change over. And so since this beer was going to come out like right along that same time, we call it the Poof. Because it's like I said, it's a good fall beer. But they essentially took a bunch of ingredients that they thought would go together, put them all together, and then this beer came out of it. Last year, I think we hit like 8.3% on it. This year, now that we kind of knew like what we were going for, we were a little bit better. But so this is the second time we've brewed this, and it was a complete just let's put this stuff together and see what happens.
Nice.
So it's kind of cool. Mapley, slight maybe like a brown sugar. I get like a little bit of a boozy flavor to it. Obviously, with 9%, you're gonna get that. Mm-hmm. But just a good fall beer. And then you can mix this with we have another beer
with whiskey.
Mix it with whiskey, yeah, for sure. Yeah, just drop a. Don't they call that a Boilermaker? Just drop a. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I think I would probably pass out if that was the case. But with this, we mixed it with our Autumn's Omen, which is a pumpkin beer, and they turned it. We call it a pumpkin party, but it's just a really solid beer you can mix with stuff, and the flavors are all there.
Nice.
It's one of those like we're getting more experimental as we go, and I think it's really important to give the brewers obviously I have to have I'm the end all be all okay, I know you guys want to do this really bad, but I just don't see a market for it right now. Or for instance, they came to me with they want to brew this crazy expensive New Zealand IPA, and all these hops are super experimental, and you can only get them imported from New Zealand. And I was like, I would sure love to do this, but it's $8,000 and I was like, this is 5 times more expensive than any beer we've ever made before, and I don't know if anyone's gonna care or give a shit about it just yet. So maybe let's hold that off for a minute. But it's really important to give them that creative space. They can feel like they're being,
But then you can apply a realistic outlook on it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sky is the limit, but we have to. At the end of the day, it's not about if it was only me, we'd brew black IPAs and ESBs all day long. But the problem is that no one buys those, and so we wouldn't be in business for very long.
True.
Yeah.
I had the question in my head and then I lost it. Oh, yeah. So, thinking back to business and running a brewery, what's kind of the elevator? I'm backing away from this. What's kind of the elevator pitch for Chapman's? If you're going around and you're talking to people, what are you telling them about that's good? What are you trying to tell them about to get them into the brewery?
So, for the longest time, we sat down and went over what our brand essence was, and what Chapman's is, and what we want to what feelings you want to have evoke when you hear the name Chapman's, or when you come into the tap room, you want to evoke some kind of like a certain feeling, right? And for us, I think I know I've talked to you personally about like table stakes of like what, who you are as a company. And so like with breweries, the table stakes for me would be like consistency in your product. Like it's gotta be a good beer, obviously. You want to have good service and that kind of stuff. And those are just like, for me, table stakes on like what you have to be a business in this day and age.
That's the bare minimum.
The bare minimum table stakes, right? But for us, what we strive to be is we want to be the adults in the room for the most part. And that's not like, throwing shade at anybody, but we've been around for a long time in Fort Wayne. I want to brew beer for people that like, look, maybe you did some experimenting with looking out for like that crazy weird 19% thing out there or whatever, but I'd like to be the beer that you want to come back to just enjoy, because you know that Harvester's not going to let you down or something like that. And so like for us, when we started off with like our roulette series, for instance, you want to come in to try the latest and greatest, but eventually you just want to make your way back to Harvester or to Englishman or whatever the core IPA is, right? And so what we're trying to be is just like, look, deciding what beer to drink shouldn't take longer than drinking it. So I don't want to have like, I don't know about you, but like a typical, like I go to like a liquor store. A typical visit for me was I would get like a 15-pack of something, a 6-pack, and a 4-pack, right? I want to be that 15-pack that people grab because they know they're going to like this thing and they trust the brand. I don't necessarily need to be the one-off weird pickle beer thing. I wouldn't mind making those, but I'd much rather be the beer that they know they can count on. And so that's when you see, Chapman's, or you come into our tap room, I want you to know that like, all right, I'm going to get good service. I'm going to enjoy the beers that I have, and just not like waste time and worry about like, oh, I wonder if there's something new, or I wonder if, whatever. I'd rather you just know that you're going to come in and enjoy yourself.
It kind of, as you were talking there, it kind of sounds like you're talking about the larger industry as a whole too, about people, going out and experimenting with new things, but then going back to what they're familiar with. And now we're at that point in the industry where things are consolidating a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that, feelings on the market as a whole?
I think you can almost bring this back to, sorry. I remember when seltzers became like a really big thing. And for a long time I said, I'll never make a seltzer. Seltzers are gross. We're not going to do that. And obviously since we have, right, we've made a couple. But like I remember when I was talking to a couple liquor store places about seltzers, they were bringing in like 30 different SKUs of seltzers every week. Brand new SKUs. So new 6-packs, new 12-packs, new 15-packs, whatever, of just new stuff out there. And what I said was going to happen, and what inevitably did, is that the customer base just consolidated down to their like 3 brands that they know and they trust. And then now you pretty much only see those 3 brands in liquor stores. So you have like your White Claw, you have your Truly, and you might see like a random Founder's seltzer out there, or a Stone seltzer or something. But you pretty much just have those 3 or 4 base seltzers. What I see the craft beer industry going to is it's still like for instance, we're both in our 30s now, right? You're 30.
31. Fresh in the 30s,
Fresh
yes.
in the 30s, okay. I'm 35. When I was 22, 23, I would go out there and I'd try every quadruple, double, triple IPA I can get my hands on. I'd try all the stouts. I'd try all the things that I possibly could get after, right? But now that I've grown up, I can't physically do that anymore. So I just, I get, look.
You can't do the hangovers anymore?
I can't do the hangovers. I get tired. I get full and bloated. I just don't feel good when I do that anymore. So yeah, I'll go out there and try them here and there, but I'm not going to have 7 or 8 of those like I used to. What I'd rather have is like a real good crispy boy. And so crispy boy, for those of you that don't know, is just a good lager, right? Mm-hmm. So what I find, like all of us craft beer guys that made the industry what it is in like the 2015, 2019, we're all grown up now. And so for the majority of us, I see us going back to that normalcy of like, I just want something that I can drink a handful of, feel fine, and then be able to go home and be in bed by 9. That's all I want. You know what I mean? I think we're all just we're all getting up there.
Well, the craft beer consumers are probably going through that stage as well. It's not just brewers.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. The consumer itself we're all getting older. And if you look at like trends of like Gen Z or, the generation after them, they're just not drinking like we were. They're doing other things, right? But unfortunately, they're doing other things. I would love it if they would come back. And we are seeing some, like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel for this. And so we're seeing like the generation after Gen Z, they're going back to drinking a little bit more. But there's a lot of Gen Z thinks that it's bad for your health to drink, and which is true if you drink to extent every night. But yeah, I think a lot of our consumer base is just going back to that, like, look, I want to be able to go out, I want to have a handful of beers that I trust, and then I want to go home. And that's kind of what we're going after.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready for a happy boy, if you are.
Happy boy, let's do it. Okay, so this beer doesn't have a can yet because we're still waiting on the label. But this is called Lumen. This is our first ever core hazy IPA. And so back in the day, like I said, we would have considered this to be like a gimmicky beer. Not really a gimmick anymore. Hazy IPAs, as far as like craft go, they still kind of rule the roost.
Mm-hmm. They've aged well. They're now a standard IPA.
They're a standard IPA. And a lot of us, it's called BJCP. I forget what that stands for. But essentially it's the brewer's guidelines for like styles. And so, for instance, you brew a beer, you're making a certain style. This book tells you this is the color it should be, this is what it should taste like, this is the percent it needs to be at, all that good stuff. And when hazies first came out, there was no like standard for anything, but now that it's been around for 10 years, there's actually like a standard. And we find this to be like right down the barrel of what a hazy IPA is for us. And we're, it's our first new core in a handful of years. So
nice.
Yeah.
No, it tastes delicious. Thinking about styles, not specific beer names, but styles. And I'm putting you on the spot here. Like just think about it and off the top of your head, what are your top sellers?
Sorry, I had to rip the vape there for a second.
Do it.
Shut up, Jamie. Week over week, top sellers. I think it's enigmatic of like the consumer. And week over week, top seller would be typically one of our lagers, followed up closely by a hazy IPA. And so I wouldn't say it's like those two are doing battle. I would say that we have a good mix of, look, people that are here and they want to have a crispy lager and they want to have a bunch of them and they want to go home and this beer makes them feel good and they like it and it's drinkable and all that good stuff. And then you have that craft beer head that comes in and they, you put a hazy IPA on a menu and a hipster's going to drink it, right? So like that's the whole point.
And of the hazy of the IPAs, the hazy is probably the most approachable.
I would say it's
like citrusy, the most juicy forward.
I think if you and when I say hipsters, like, hello, what's going on? King hipster right here. But if you, I remember back in the day, like, look, you weren't a craft beer guy if you didn't drink IPAs. That just is what it is. And I think we did ourselves a big disservice by treating it that way, because now everyone that hears craft beer thinks, oh, it's going to be hoppy and bitter, and I'm not going to like it. And it's like, no, craft beer just means that it's a small local craft, made by not robot hands, made by people, that kind of thing.
Artisanal, in a sense.
Artisanal, yeah. And when I think hazy IPA, I think an IPA with training wheels, if you will. So a traditional classic IPA is going to be bitter and full of that piney aroma and like those slight citrusy kind of flavors. But a hazy IPA, you're going to get a lot more like of a juicy citrus, and then way less hops behind it. It's because it's mostly masked by all the extra flavors. So it's just a IPA on training wheels. And I would say it's, if like somebody wanted to come in and like try to get into craft beers, I'd say probably go after, and you wanted to get with IPAs, go after a hazy first, because it's going to be less kick you in the teeth on your palate kind of thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But so back to biggest sellers, lager and then
Lager and hazies.
hazies. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yep. Sorry, find our way back.
So you talked a little bit about the hub and spoke model and of how, and you were kind of known for a while as having a lot of tap rooms in the Fort Wayne area.
Yep.
Like what changed? What made you want to consolidate? Like what was that process for you guys?
So the original idea, and like I said, I wasn't here for the inception of Chapman's, but the original idea was we were going to brew everything up out of Angola, a whole bunch of it, and then sell it to all of our own tap rooms all over Indiana. And so the plan was that, initially the plan was like to take that show on the road kind of thing, where it's like every small town. Back in the day, like if you look at 100 years ago, every small town did have their own little brewery in it, and they had their own little drink, like their own little watering holes, right? And so I think they wanted to try to bring that idea back by putting a small Chapman's tap room in a bunch of small cities. But over the course of these, we went through COVID, we went through the rise and the inevitable, I wouldn't say crash, but realignment of craft beer right now. It's just not, it just doesn't work the way that we had envisioned it. There was just way too many moving parts. To be honest with you, not enough people to like actually in charge, making sure that that every tap room was the best version of itself, essentially. So inevitably, you're going to have your redheaded stepchild of like the group, and so instead of going down that rabbit hole, I just opted to consolidate everything into one location. And for us, we can make sure that we're brewing out of one spot, and so it's going to be a lot easier to distro from the one space instead of picking up and dropping off everywhere. And two, we can have a really watchful eye over, let's make sure that all of the beers are A, tasting the best they possibly can, but B, people have like the best possible experience when they are in our tap room, because we just have the one. It's easier to make sure that we have a complete grasp over what that experience looks like, and we can be in charge of all of that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's start you over. All right, you are a new brewer.
Okay.
Going into the industry in 2025, looking down the barrel of 2026.
Okay.
What are some tips you're going to give him to be successful? What are you saying to this guy or gal?
Hello, guy or gal. No, what I would say is you have to be a owner-operator first, number one. So if you want to own a craft brewery and you want to start something small, I would really recommend learning how to brew yourself and being the owner-operator and the brewer of your tap room for the first 5 or 6 years probably. So you're not going to get a whole lot of sleep, and you're probably not going to make a ton of money based off of how many hours that you're working. But I would say that it's the easiest to have total control, because you're not having to hire all these people and have to worry about if they're going to leave you or quit or whatever. But if you're the brewer, you know exactly what you want to make, and you want to make the best possible product. But then also you're in charge of hiring, you're in charge of all the marketing, you're in charge of everything all at once, and you have a complete watchful eye over like every piece of your kingdom right there, rather than I'm starting a thing and I'm going to hire a brewer, and I'm going to hire a taproom manager, and I'm going to hire, all this stuff. I would say it's best for you just to handle all of that for the first handful of years, and then bring on new people slowly, personally. And then second, I would say definitely know your market on where you're putting the brewery, and like what the age demographics look like, what you can expect your clientele to look like, what kind of beers they want. Because like I said earlier, like it's not really about what you like, it's about your consumer. And so, for instance, like I'm good buddies with a bunch of other brewers in the area, right? And so one of the cider guys that's in this area hated making like sweet ciders off the start, and they didn't do very well because Indiana likes things that are really sweet. And so as soon as they changed over to making more sweet stuff, they saw their sales all start to skyrocket. But they only wanted to brew what they liked, and it's like you're not really brewing for you anymore. You're brewing for somebody else, and so you've got to really know what they want.
You can have one tap handle.
Yeah,
But
yeah. No, like I said, If we only brewed what I like, we wouldn't sell anything because I only want to drink black IPAs and ESBs all day. That's it. But eventually, we have to or make a lager, and you have to make hazy IPAs, and you got to make all this stuff that people are going to want to come in and try. You want to be able to distro something or get a guest up out there somewhere. So, I don't know. 2 pieces of advice I'd say would be that.
Nice. Well, thank you, sir.
Yep.
Well, actually, I think that's all we have for today, so I appreciate you. So you mentioned having just down to 1 tap room now.
Yep.
Tell us where we can find you. Where can we find your beer right now, too?
So Chapman's Brewing is located at Electric Works downtown Fort Wayne. We're just off of Broadway. So you can find the tap room and all that good stuff right there. For finding any of our beers out and about, I know there is a handful of beers in liquor stores. So I think we have Harvester and Undaunted is an IPA of ours in most liquor stores around this area. Also, we got a handful of guest taps. So I think Packard's Tap House has us on right now, and it's the only one off the top of my head. There's a handful of places, but mostly craft focused bars would have a bunch of guest taps, and we usually have something on.
Nice.
That's what we got. Oh, also, check us out on Instagram at Chapman's Brewing. I think that's our Instagram handle. Link it below. Jamie, can you put that on the link below? Thank you. All right.
We know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you being our first one. And as we hinted, yes, this was our second go around after a technical mishap, but we got through it and it went much better, I think. I thought, my opinion only, I guess, but I think it went well.
I think it was a good idea to only have half a beer each.
I agree.
I feel like I am not as gone as I was last time.
Good.
But no, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it. I love doing this. Always happy.
Awesome. I just wanted to plug real quick, too, that this room is available for rent. It's a rentable podcast space here in the Electric Works co-working area. And you can contact the co-working front desk, I guess we'll call it, in order to schedule, or you can contact me. I appreciate you coming out, and it's been fun.
Thanks for having me.